So hey guys, it's Plots-A-Lot here with another My Hero Academia What If video, and today we're going to be doing part 9 of What If Deku was the Avatar. Deku walks up to the stage after the 1v1 matches have begun, and the lotteries have been decided. His match against Shinso begins with a question. How are you planning to win this one? Asks Shinso. Shinso grins at this, as Deku responds, not wanting to be rude. Let's see how it plays out then. Shinso's smile grows even larger and he says 2 words. I win. Shinso casually walks towards Deku. Deku's unable to do anything. He can't move and he can't say anything as he's been brainwashed by Shinso's quirk, and after a moment of nothingness he's thrown into his own mindscape. The Avatar can't be controlled. We aren't that weak, ring the voices of his past lives in unison. Deku stumbles for a moment before regaining control, already having been carried to the edge of the ring on Shinso's shoulders, and he's about to be thrown out, but Deku flips himself over Shinso's head and runs back to the center of the arena. Neat trick, says Deku, but it won't work again. Shinso asks Deku, and how do you plan to stop me? To which Deku responds, I have a good idea of how I can do that again. Shinso brainwashes him again, and the same set of events repeat, with Shinso in a bigger hurry as he knows that his opponent might break out at any moment. Deku has a good idea as to what his opponent's quirk may be, and so Shinso gets no response to his questions for the rest of the match. Deku runs up towards Shinso faster than he can react and delivers a devastating roundhouse kick to his side. He follows it through, slamming Shinso to the side and onto the floor. The assault doesn't stop. Deku's determined to win, but on a more fair playing field. His opponent is essentially quirkless if he stays silent, so returning the favour is only fair. Deku jumps at Shinso again, but he's more prepared for the physical attack this time, blocking it with his arm and punching Deku in the stomach. The crowd goes wild. The multi-quirk wonder Izuku Midoriya isn't using his quirk. What's going on? Screams Present Mike, egging on the cheers. Deku looks into the crowd and directly at Todoroki and screams, my power is my choice to use, before turning his head back swiftly to an incoming punch. Deku ducks under it and shoves his fist into Shinso's stomach with a strong uppercut. Deku continues pummeling Shinso, moving him closer and closer to the edge with a ceaseless barrage of attacks. Just before he knocks him off, Deku stops. Everybody's confused for a moment, and then they see Shinso slump to the floor unconscious, naming Deku the winner as his opponent is unable to continue the fight. The rest of the matches are pretty much the same until Bakugou vs Ochako. Bakugou absolutely blitzes her at the start of the match with One For All, hitting her at close range with a repeated flurry of punches and explosions, knocking her out of the ring before she can even really react. It was absolute carnage, since Bakugou's much stronger in this world. The next match that's of significance is Deku vs Todoroki. Todoroki makes the first move, shooting a column of ice at Deku. Deku waterbends the ice around him and it returns the ice as a spiraling stream of water. Todoroki freezes the ice, but it's blocked by both his and Deku's view of the arena. It's blocked by another sheet of ice that they both put up, trying to instinctively block each other's attacks, which is a bit counterproductive, but it does work as neither of them can attack each other. There's this seeming labyrinth. There's this weird labyrinth in between them and they can't really navigate it very well, and so they just jump onto the winding paths of ice that have formed in the air and slide across them, trying to find one another in a weird game of cat and mouse where both are trying to hunt one another. Todoroki sees Deku from the corner of his eye and spins in place, twisting the ice around his foot to keep his footing as he launches a massive whirlwind of fire towards the young Avatar, melting the thick sheets of ice twirling around in the air in its path. Deku hears the roar of superheated air rushing towards him and jumps straight up into the air, axe kicking the flame down and sending it crashing into the ground in a small explosion. Deku launches fireballs back into the direction of the flame, but they're swallowed by another torrent of incoming flame. Deku decides to use this to his advantage and uses a waterbending stance with firebending moves to change the direction of the torrent back to Todoroki, bending the flame like a stream of water and increasing its size and speed by channeling his energy into it. Todoroki tries to block it with a wall of ice, but the Inferno smashes straight through, knocking Todoroki back and closer towards the edge of the ring. He stops himself with his ice and steps 1 foot backwards, his ice and fire powers both activating to their fullest. Giant shards of ice and buffets of fire spewing out of both sides of his body, converging onto his target. Deku prepares himself, encasing him in an armor made of concrete and swirling the air around him into a giant vortex of gale force winds, blowing everyone in the crowd back with the massive amount of air pressure. The winds suddenly subside as they contract into the palm of Deku's hand as a giant, almost solid ball of air. Deku and Todoroki's eyes lock as they both release their respective coup de grace at each other. Cementos attempts to step in, creating a series of giant solid concrete walls between the two to soften the impact of the blow, but the attacks simply decimate the walls in their paths of destruction and collide with a giant explosion, a vortex of spinning air swallowing Todoroki's attack, as well as the near atomized rock from the walls and compressing it within itself, expelling it at high velocity straight up into the air due to the immense pressure, rocking the entire arena and its surroundings with an enormous bang. The dust clears, Todoroki lying out of the ring, unconscious from the impact, as Deku falls to the ground and just back into the ring, clinging to his own consciousness by a mere strand, raising his arm into the air in a fist before passing out, his rock armor crumbling off of him and onto the ground. The winner is Izuku Midoriya, yells out present Mike, the crowd bursting into a cheer as Deku's arm falls to the ground, passing out onto the floor. Deku is lucky that neither he nor Todoroki died. At the last minute, he used all of his strength to bend the explosive rushes of fire, water, and air, as well as the atomized dust of super fast rock into the air, just angled slightly towards Todoroki, ensuring he felt more of the shockwave than he did, and it was a lucky break that he got the angle just right. Too far and it would have killed his opponent, too little and he would have lost. An hour passes and Deku is mostly recovered, ready for his fight with Bakugo. He is annoyed. Bakugo's extremely annoyed that Deku made him wait. It took you long enough, shouldn't have been so bad. Maybe you would have won that fight by more than sheer luck if you were any good, says Bakugo, jeering at him. Deku ignores this with a steely look on his face. He's determined to beat Bakugo, his rival, and show the world that he is the Avatar, a powerful entity capable of bringing balance and peace to the world. Bakugo, on the other hand, he's determined to live up to All Might's expectations and show the world that he's the best. Sure, the whole becoming the symbol of peace thing for the world and hopefully, helping is great, but mostly he just wants to wipe the floor with his childhood rival. The second motive, that's much noticeably stronger than the first. That's a lot bigger. He doesn't really care that much about the first, but he'll do it because he still wants to impress All Might. That's part of his goals as well, and he is a bit less shallow than in the original timeline. As soon as the match begins, Bakugo rushes towards Deku with a burst of speed. Deku counters by raising a wall of rock between them that gets crushed by an explosion, sending rubble all around the arena, and exposes Bakugo's malicious grin to Deku. He's not just here to beat Deku, he's here to show how much he can decimate him. In Bakugo's eyes, he has this in the bag. Bakugo follows up with a one-for-all powered roundhouse kick to Deku's side, and Deku just about manages to raise a wall in between, but Deku follows through. And Bakugo just kicks straight through. He follows through the kick as Deku follows through, raising it into the air, and at this point, there's no more rock to raise from the ground, he's just lifting it into the air. He slams it down, but Bakugo leaps over it and Deku to get behind him. Deku rotates the ground underneath him, and submerges his feet into the ground, spinning himself in place. And Bakugo kicks again, sending Deku shooting to the side towards the edge of the ring in his little encased ring of sand that he's standing in. Deku skids to a halt quickly by turning the concrete into an even coarser sand, making the small grains that he'd created into slightly larger gravel-like rocks, and kicks his submerged foot into the air, creating a large blob of cement-like sand. He's floating in front of him like a sort of barrier. Bakugo leaps over Deku to get behind him, but Deku just turns the sand behind him, and Bakugo's explosion hits the sand, sending him flying backwards. Bakugo goes ahead and tries to rotate around Deku, trying to find an angle where he can attack from, but Deku's keeping this barrier in front of him fairly consistently, and Bakugo finally sees an opening. He tries to jump over, but Deku's prepared. Deku thins out the sand and compresses it into a hard rod, sending it spinning on its axis at Bakugo. Bakugo jumps over it in midair by rotating his hips and swiveling, using an explosion on his palm to push himself off of the rod and towards Deku. He shatters it in the process, this hard rock of concrete, of compressed concrete, and Deku sees this. He's scared, honestly. He jumps into a cross-legged position and rides off on his air scooter, fleeing, narrowly dodging Bakugo's forward charge before jumping off and punching forwards, sending a ball of fire hurtling towards his opponent. Bakugo just slams into it with his palm, sending a shockwave through the fireball and careening into a ring around him as he slowly walks towards what he sees as certain victory. Deku senses Bakugo's calm yet menacing demeanor and knows something's up, instinctively jumping back. Bakugo reacts in turn by speeding up into a charge before activating One for All through his body and jumping straight up into the air. Bakugo spins himself in midair with explosions before letting off a well-timed explosion behind him, sending him flying towards Deku with One for All activated and his arm outstretched. Deku ducks underneath, but Bakugo lands and kicks him in the back before he can react, sending the young avatar rolling forwards on his face. Bakugo jumps and punches the ground where Deku's head lay. Deku rolls to safety in the nick of time, but there's a crater in the ground where his head previously was. He lifts himself horizontally into the air with airbending and swivels himself round, delivering a firebending boosted kick to Bakugo's head, but Bakugo cartwheels through the air as Deku lands, gaining his poise. The kick didn't do very much. He circles back around the ring towards Deku, and Deku prepares for a head-on assault, but Bakugo uses his palms to start zigzagging through the air rapidly. This isn't his usual fighting style, thinks Deku to himself. But if I know Bakugo, he's not going to change that much. He's going to use his favourite move after showing off, thinks Deku. Flipping onto his left palm, Deku raises himself into the air with a thin pillar of earth. Bakugo's gotten close, and he's gone for the right hook. Deku flips sideways off of his support and grabs Bakugo's right arm, twisting himself forwards with a well-placed current of air, and shoots himself across the ground as if he were on an air hockey rink by using jets of fire from his heels. And he abruptly stops by using airbending to create a wall of air in front of him, breaking. He sinks himself into the earth, slamming craters into the ground where his feet are using earthbending, cementing his position, and throws Bakugo over his shoulder as hard as he can with a massive stride, slamming Bakugo into the ground and onto his back, winding him. The ground smashes under the sheer force of the throw, and Bakugo is left winded as Deku prepares to finish the match. A swirling current of air forms in Deku's hand as he plunges it towards his opponent's chest, but Bakugo uses his unfrozen palm to skid across the ground out of reach. One of his palms is stuck in the ground. He uses that again, his palm that isn't smashed into the ground, to get it out, but Deku's prepared. He uses all of the sweat on himself and shoots a shard of ice towards his arm that he's just gotten out of the ground. He crystallizes it around Bakugo's other palm, essentially stopping him from using it by freezing all of the sweat. He jumps again towards Bakugo, still on the ground, with another ball of air, and Bakugo shoots himself away with his other palm, the palm that isn't frozen now, and comes to a skid across the ground and out of reach. Deku's attack hits the ground, carving a spherical groove into the concrete before realizing that Bakugo is a few meters away. They both regain their composure, Bakugo flicking himself into the air with an explosion and clapping his hands together, creating an explosion, melting the ice on his palm instantaneously. Deku and Bakugo are both getting a bit tired at this point, but both still have a lot of fight left in them. Deku slaps his palms together and slowly widens his hands out into a diamond shape, a small ball of flame forming in the arch between his fingers and thumbs before clapping his hands together, his fists enveloping in flames. Bakugo forms a small smile. just a small one, as red sparks of what seems to be electricity crackle in an energetic dance around his body. "I'll admit, Deku, you've pushed me a bit. Let's get a bit more serious," screams Bakugo as he charges at Deku even faster than before. Deku barely has time to react as Bakugo slams his fist into Deku's chest, sending him flying back. He raises a wall behind him just in time to stop himself and turns it to sand to prevent a harsh impact, but Deku sees Bakugo just in front of him again, but he drops into a squat just in time, pushing a pillar of earth up into Bakugo's chest. "Got him," thinks Deku. But to his horror, Bakugo lets off an explosion at point-blank range, not even feeling the thick pillar of earth that just slammed into his chest. Deku closes his eyes and visualizes the flames in the explosion. His body moves automatically and the explosion seems to halt in its path. Deku opens his eyes and Bakugo's infuriated, a huge fireball stationary in midair as he's retreated. Deku steps back on his left leg and bends the explosion into a ring. "You need to learn control," he says, as he surrounds the ring of fire with a spinning vortex of air and rubble from the ground, rotating perpendicularly to the frames and creating a rotating whirlwind of fire. His hand squeezes into a fist as the gyroscope increases in size until his fist collides with the flaming orb. Deku's fist slams into the gyroscope of elements, sending an inferno roaring across the stage and towards Bakugo. Bakugo zigzags around the path of destruction, but he can't avoid the orb. It's melting the concrete underneath into a molten sludge, and Bakugo jumps into the air and directly above the eye of the swirling vortex of different elements before yelling, "Gatling gun!" A torrent of explosions release from his arm at high speed as the tornado swells in size before dissipating in a blinding flash. Deku's knocked back right to the edge of the ring by the shockwave, narrowly stopping himself as Bakugo maneuvers through the air like a falcon towards him. Deku narrowly dodges one of his punches, but the punch destroys the arena wall behind him from the sheer air pressure. Slowly getting up, time slows down as Deku hears a familiar voice whisper in his head. Multiple familiar voices. A whole menagerie of them. "Let us show the world the power of the Avatar." Deku's foot slams into the ground. The bottom of his shoes are burnt to ash and scattered by a sudden wind. He looks up to Bakugo with a piercing scare and a stare. He scares him to death with his icy blue eyes, his eyes showing no emotion along with the rest of his face. He points directly at Bakugo. A giant jet of white-hot flame erupts from his fingertips, smacking Bakugo square in the stomach and sending him flying backwards and over the edge of the ring. Avatar Deku slides his foot across the ground to the left, his fingers slowly sliding down to the ground as the clouds in the sky disappear. Bakugo narrowly staying back in the ring, just hovering over the edge with his explosions just landing. A moment passes and the crowd looks up to wonder why it's suddenly gotten darker. And they see a gigantic ball of water hovering above the arena and its now clear skies, and turn back to Deku to see him raising his other palm before sliding his hand across his body and clicking. Deku turns and throws a hammer fist in Bakugo's directions, causing a giant column of ice to crash down from the floating lake in the heavens and slam Bakugo straight into the ground and out of the arena with an unstoppable size and speed. Deku's eyes return to normal, and he again snaps his fingers. The giant water ball disperses into a torrential rain for a moment. He looks up, projecting his voice with air bending, his eyes flashing blue for just another brief moment, and he says, "I am the Avatar." I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's the longest one that I've done so far, and yeah, this is quite action-packed, I think, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. But yeah, I've been on a holiday, and to be honest, for a bit, I've just been a bit ill, and for a couple of days, I've just been a bit lazy. So yeah, I apologize for not making any videos, but yeah, hope this one makes up for it a little bit. yeah, it's been a fun ride, I guess. That's probably the best way I can put it. It was up to this point, this series has been one of my favorites to make, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. It's honestly really fun because Avatar is one of my favorite cartoons of all time, and just seeing it kind of being able to interact with this universe in interesting ways is really interesting and inspiring, actually. I quite enjoy it, so I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to see more videos, subscribe. If you like the video, like it, leave a comment on any constructive criticism or ideas, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video, hopefully. Alright, bye guys.